And here we are again on this thing that is still called the tentative title, Tentative Format Podcast, or T3F. Because why not? It's got to be called something, right? And who knows? Maybe I'll keep it, maybe I won't. I don't know. Maybe I'll listen to feedback. I'll see what people are saying. I'll see. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a poll. But for now, this is what it is. I kind of dig the whole under construction kind of visual style. So whatever, we'll go with it. So we're back here to discuss kind of a busy week, eventful week, which is interesting to say in the midst of this insane year of coronavirus and protests and elections and just general insanity. But in our small little corner of the internet, things have been a-churnin' since we convened last. You know, after the whole Harper's letter and the counter letter to the letter and all of that crap, came the resignation of Bari Weiss from the New York Times with a letter that was pretty damning about the sort of the work culture there, and had to do less with cancel culture per se, and more with the work environment that she felt like she was under. She felt that it was a sort of an untenable work situation for her, and that her bosses were not intervening to stop what she considered to be hostility. And that letter obviously caused a little bit of a stir again in a sort of a follow-up way to the whole debate that raged after the Harper's letter. And a big complaint, a big thing that you know the Bari Weiss detractors were saying is something that we discussed last week, which is that her complaints are hollow because she has a platform, and after all, nothing's going to happen to her career after leaving the Times. She's going to go on speaking circuits, and she's going to make lots of money. She's going to write a book, and yada yada. And so cancel culture isn't real because this isn't going to ruin her. But this brings up exactly one of the big problems, which is it's not so much about the cancellation. It's that she was deemed cancel worthy. She was put in that sort of box of being someone who is like a fair target for cancellation. Now, that's why the word cancellation here is a bit of a misnomer, because yes, there are some people who are quote unquote immune to being canceled, but the things that people allow themselves to do to those people are the problem. Meaning the fact that Bari Weiss is not going to be destitute and on the street is irrelevant to the fact that because she was deemed cancel worthy, that means that like harassing her on the work Slack channel is okay, and your bosses won't even like yell at you to not do it. They'll maybe ask you politely, and then maybe you'll stop and maybe you won't stop. And so it's less about the end result. It's less about what punishment or what lasting consequences someone has to suffer, and more what is permissible to do to them, how it is permissible to treat them because they are cancel worthy. And that's essentially what happens. But when you're powerless, often that leads to you being fired or otherwise sanctioned in some way. And there is just an amazing contrast between how people speak about cancel-worthy people and how it flies in the face of how they speak about everybody else and all of the time. I don't know, just off the top of my head, Jessica Valenti, who's a huge, believe women feminist, and, is so easy to throw that away, or not throw it away, but all of a sudden invent arbitrary qualifiers to this when it's inconvenient for her because her target is a woman of some sort, whether it's Ivanka Trump or I don't know who, or, in this case, Bari Weiss specifically, where it's totally okay to say, oh, she's just a crybaby who doesn't like that she's being criticized. I don't remember if Valenti said this specifically. Don't quote me on this being her comment, but the general attitude of a lot of Bari's critics was that she's just whining, and she didn't like that people criticized her at work there, except what she described in her letter was literal harassment, with people putting guillotine emoji next to her name in Slack channels and legitimately shitting on her in public, and again, creating a work environment that she felt that she couldn't stand anymore. And so to just skip over that, to just act like she didn't say any of that, when we're talking about Jessica Valenti, if you were to erase the name Bari Weiss, if you were to say to me, some woman detailed a pattern of harassment at work that was, not addressed by the bosses and got bad enough that she had to get up and leave, and Jessica Valenti was totally cool with it and was super unimpressed by her complaints. Because we're talking about Jessica Valenti, my response would have probably been, oh, is she conservative? Which is funny because Bari Weiss isn't even conservative. But she's in the cancel-worthy box, is the point. And so obviously, there was this minor hoopla, and people were speculating on what would happen, because then also Andrew Sullivan, who has had tensions brewing with New York Magazine, announced that he was leaving. There was already some controversy recently about that, where I believe he was there was this whole story about where, they would have to approve or reject his columns based on how much they were going to offend people. And so then immediately there was a speculation of oh, are Bari Weiss and Andrew Sullivan going to team up? And then there was this whole rumor that Ben Shapiro was going to join them because he had stepped down from being editor-in-chief of Daily Wire. And so there was this whole talk of oh, are they going to form a super team? Are they going to go down to Miami and and all play for the Heat? But Sullivan just announced today or yesterday that he was relaunching his old blog, but on Substack. Once again, here comes Substack to the rescue of someone who was canceled, kind of like Matt Taibbi, who's now kind of a rising star using his Substack. But that put to rest the theory that this was all planned. A lot of people said, oh, this was all timed. They timed it on the same day. Clearly, there's some kind of business thing in the works here. And, from what happened today with Sullivan, that seems to have been just totally wrong. And I don't know if they both planned to do that on the same day and it was just a coincidence. I don't know if Sullivan saw that Bari did it and then just said, fuck it, I'll just do this today when I was going to do it on Monday or I don't know when. But the fact that they both did it on the same day actually did create this sort of effect that was greater than the sum of its parts. There was this, this was a sense that something was happening. Oh, finally something is happening. But there's things like this kind of have a slow burn. There is no explosion of whatever. But there is a sense to me that there is this emerging. It's like a loose web. Not an intellectual dark web, but almost like a loose network of people that are like-minded on this sort of, battlefront of ideas. I called it to somebody the other day, neo-heterodoxy, only because there are strange bedfellows to this debate in a way that makes it kind of like a heterodoxy that's not like old school. Like when you get Noam Chomsky and Bari Weiss to sign the same letter that talks about, like risks to freedom of expression, that's not the heterodoxy of old. I mean, because even though, the point of heterodoxy is to bring together people who are, don't agree on stuff, I don't know if you would have gotten Chomsky and Bari Weiss to sign the same kind of like free expression letter in years past. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I'm that wrong. But now there is this whole emerging, it's not a thing. I don't think it's ever going to be a thing. I don't think there's ever, like I said, the whole intellectual dark web, which was like a moniker that the second you get a label like that, I think, is like the beginning of the end. It's like being put on the shelf in the supermarket. Like you start rotting the second you got that label slapped on you. You got to your sell by date is then. I don't think it would be a good idea to label this something. The point is that the people who are clearly bothered by this current kind of atmosphere and who recognize its existence and also, mention that it's not good is kind of wide and broad and not who you'd expect necessarily, and it's beset on both sides by opponents, meaning there's people both to the left of this whole kind of like weird blob and to the right who are saying, no, you're wrong, because there is this sort of counter, like I keep saying, when people say cancel culture isn't real because the real victims of cancel culture are pro-Palestinians and LGBT and all kinds of stuff like that, I say, no, that is cancel culture. That's both sides trying to take down the other side. This is, again, I said last week, I believe that the term like culture war is sort of ironic and not to be taken seriously, because this is, again, a corner of the extremely online community. And yes, it does have sort of implications beyond that. But I think that the passion about it exists in this very insular community. But it is a war in the sense that, like, it isn't one side attacking and one side defending. There are attackers on both sides of this conflict, for sure. I think the defenders are like the people in the middle, as though there's like two armies, like lobbing bombs at each other. And, there's a group of civilians in the middle. And those are the people who are like, can we not do this, please? Can we, even, if we hate each other, can we not just like throw bombs at each other? And so it'll be interesting to see if this new understanding among like a kind of a broader, non-traditional group of, like-minded people will produce something interesting. And another interesting thing that happened with the Bari Weiss resignation is there was a lot of silence, a lot of interesting silence from people you'd expect to have been very vocally happy and, like fist pumping over it and stuff. And there wasn't. And that's very interesting. There were also no full-throated denials of anything. Not that I saw anyway. I saw some people, like questioning whether or not she was telling the truth, but none of the people involved. Again, at least not that I saw. And that is interesting. That is interesting, especially because, the whole point, there's this whole ongoing thing about how the Times and also the Washington Post, by the way, can't really control their employees who have large social media followings. At the Washington Post, there was the whole Felicia Sanmez story when Kobe Bryant died. Remember that Kobe Bryant died? That happened this year, by the way. That happened in 2020. But Felicia Sanmez, chose that occasion to talk about his sexual assault case and stuff like that, causing a big controversy. The Post tried to suspend her for violating social media policy. It turned into a gigantic shitstorm, and they had to walk it back. And she came out like a big winner from that. And again, the idea that people at the Times, employees at the Times, can shit on Bari Weiss both on like company Slacks and on Twitter openly, like mock and deride her. And the bosses at the New York Times can't do anything, and yet here it is. Here she is walking out the door, and there's a Taylor Swiftian silence. And again, she implied, she used the terms in her resignation letter that could point to like litigation, hostile work environment, and stuff like that. And so there was likely some kind of instruction there at the Times to zip it about this. And for once, people actually listened, which again to me is a telling thing. It makes me think that there is maybe something there, and not just they said, she said kind of story. But I guess we'll see. Which leads into the second thing I wanted to talk about that happened this week, which was interesting, weird, funny, scary, many different angles to this story. The unprecedented Twitter hack that happened. Briefly, the story is that a bunch of major accounts, and by major I mean Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Obama, Biden. I'm trying to think of anybody else who is as high profile as that, but a series of accounts of that magnitude all tweeted out a Bitcoin scam. It was one of those like, I'm giving back to the community because of COVID-19. So for the next 30 minutes, any amount of Bitcoin that is sent to this wallet address is going to be sent back, to double the amount that they send, which people, there's no, like, okay, that's like total scam language. Let's start there, because the scammers got a lot of money this way. And I understand it's Bill Gates, and I understand it's Elon Musk, but like, still, there's no what. But like, what? You know what? Let's not get into the world of why people fall for scams. There are plenty of other. There's entire TV shows about people who give their life savings away to Nigerian scams just because like they refuse to like admit to themselves that it's a scam. And they get kind of sucked into this like rabbit hole of like just giving away everything in the hopes that eventually they'll be vindicated and see that it was all legit. It's actually kind of sad. But the scary part was that it was coming from all of these verified accounts and all at once. How do you hack Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Obama and Biden and a bunch of other major like verified influencers all at the same time, right? That's pretty freaky. And everybody freaked out, including Twitter. And in a sort of a panicky stopgap measure, Twitter disabled tweeting for all verified accounts, which has like nothing like that has ever happened before, and is a functionality that people weren't even aware. I mean, I guess in theory, there's nothing stopping them from doing something like that. In theory, but nobody knew there was like a switch, like a big off switch, which I guess there is. And then also, it came out that what had happened was it wasn't that these accounts were all hacked individually. It was that these hackers had gained access to like some kind of admin console, which I guess lets you tweet from any account that you want, which is also kind of scary and a functionality that people didn't know that existed. And also the screenshots of this admin console revealed all kinds of functionalities that Twitter kind of denied that they had, like the ability to blacklist you from searches or blacklist hashtags. Oddly enough, it was even called that, which made people laugh because just recently Twitter announced like a series of like, the woke revamping of coding language to eliminate stuff like blacklist, but they're still using it in order to do a thing that they denied that they were doing. And then also, they started blocking the tweets from journalists who were tweeting out the screenshot of this thing. And so then they were forced to then just like stick it in an article. I think it was like Gizmodo or something like that. What a nightmare, right? And this is all happening in real time, and nobody knows exactly what the story is. And then the hackers say they paid someone who had access. They bribed someone, I guess. This was later, these reports were later confirmed, but here's the deal. That this is what the hackers said, right? The hackers said we paid somebody and they gave us the password. And there was also, they had also like disabled two-factor for Elon Musk, I think, and changed his password. And so then after that, now is the question of like, were these people in their DMs? Did these people scrape all of Elon Musk and Bill Gates and Obama's Twitter DMs? Do they even say things that are important in Twitter DMs? I would say Elon Musk probably does. I don't know if Obama or Biden or Bill Gates uses Twitter in that way, but like there could be stuff in Elon Musk's DMs that I don't know, like he wouldn't want out, other people wouldn't want out. But not just them. Other accounts, DMs of other accounts, like the idea that they were in and had this admin access for a while is really concerning. And the question of what did they have access to? What did they take beyond the, six figures that they managed to scam people out of doing this, which I guess they did. But more importantly, there was a lot of speculation about this. There's a lot of, there's obviously some of this, like, veers right into conspiracy theory, tinfoil hat land, but not all of it. And the question is, was this purely a Bitcoin scam? Or was the Bitcoin scam, like the cover for what they were actually doing, which stuff, for example, like scraping people's DMs or putting in backdoors, Trojans, and preparing for something else? Was it a trial run of some sort for something? And again, you say trial run, and so people get all tinfoil hatty, but I just mean like, because the thing that I thought when this happened is, wow, if a similar thing like this happened, I don't know, like on election day, or maybe during like a major global event like a terrorist attack or something like that, that would be really bad. And I know that people say, oh, Twitter isn't real life, but that's not entirely true. It depends in what way you mean. In some ways it doesn't measure obviously what like national sentiment is, but in terms of like the flow of like real-time information during something that's going on, a critical thing, it is actually important because media organizations are very Twitter oriented, and often in a rapidly developing situation, social media, because everybody, like the public, is plugged into social media, often information will flow that way. It's almost like crowdsourced, because if there's a terrorist attack somewhere, then the people who are around there will pull out their phones and they take video, and then the media who are heavily online pick that up and deliver it to the rest of the public. Officials, especially Trump now, use Twitter as their main conduit to get information out to people. I mean, Trump has said this before. He said, that the beauty of Twitter is that it bypasses the media. He says, the media has all these filters of editors and anchors, and they got airtime restrictions and stuff, and all, and he says, and they all hate me, obviously. And so why are they going to put out the message that I want in the way that I want and at the time that I want? I got my own megaphone. I just go there and I do that, and they pick it up or don't. And, I almost don't care if CNN then decides to take the video that I tweeted and play it on CNN. It's on Twitter and it has millions of views and people will see it. And so, being able to shut off that whole thing in the middle of something where it is needed is a very concerning capability. Twitter eventually restored, like the ability of verified accounts to tweet, and said that there was a security breach and they were taking care of it and stuff like that. But there are some harder questions, I think, that need to be answered that I don't know that will, about, like I said, the implications of this going forward. Who at Twitter has the ability to do this? What kind of safeguards are in place in order to, because again, if the president tweets something, and I know people immediately, like the people who hate Trump and are freaked out about Trump all the time, immediately went to, what if Trump's account tweets, the bombing starts in 5 minutes, like the famous Reagan thing, and starts World War III. I'm less I'm less in the camp that believes that something like that could actually happen, meaning that even if Trump's account were to tweet, hey, we're going to nuke North Korea, there are enough like missile detection systems and other global means of actual communication that can be brought to bear in order to like tell people that that's not true. But that's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee of other bad, scary things happening as collateral. It doesn't have to be nuclear war with North Korea that happens. It could be something far more minor on a, geopolitical scale, but, just as dangerous. And yeah, I don't think that Twitter has yet given a really good breakdown and explanation of what happened. And I like I said, I'm not sure that we're going to get one. I mean, Twitter is sort of famously opaque about this stuff anyway. But it's just another lesson on how these systems that we are so utterly plugged into have elements that we take for granted that we really shouldn't. Like I said, like for instance, even if you see a tweet from Trump's account or Obama's account or Elon Musk's account, you need to approach it as though if it's something that's way out of left field, if it's something that seems crazy, then maybe you shouldn't react instantly. I was joking. I was out with some friends the other day, and I was joking about how retweeting something should involve a small logic puzzle. You should have to solve a little math equation in order to retweet something, or do a little CAPTCHA in order to get people to like not just smash that retweet button the second they see something, and not even bother to like put 2 milliseconds of thought into, is this true? Did I watch the entire video? Did I read the tweet properly? All that crap. It's just like smash, 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 smash. And so, give people a little like maze, like a little maze that they got to like move their finger through, like one of those like Happy Meal type things, or something that'll make them go like, ugh, I don't feel like doing that right now. Fuck it. I'm not going to retweet this. And so in that same sense, the instant reaction, you see a tweet from Elon Musk that says, I'm going to give you twice the Bitcoin. Everyone is like, I'm sending him all my Bitcoin. Because he said 30 minutes and it's Elon Musk, and it's like, no, stop, breathe, The internet it moves so quickly. I was talking last week about reaction time, about the problem is reaction time. The world just can't move as quickly as, the time that it takes a neuron to go from your brain to your finger to your phone. Like you see a thing on your phone and it goes from your eye to your brain to your finger to back to the phone screen in a split second, and everything else on Earth takes longer to develop. And so you're outpacing reality's ability to like introduce context or introduce some other method of like breaking your rationality. It's all atavistic. It's all amygdala. It's your animal brain response. Oh, I'm angry at this thing. Oh, I'm scared. Oh, I gotta do a thing. There's a deal, a 2-for-1 deal, and I gotta take it now. And you got to let your higher brain kick in and be like, wait, this is weird. Why would Elon Musk be giving me twice the Bitcoin that I send him? What, because out of the kindness of his heart? That's ridiculous, because, if he tweets that out, then he could get 1 million Bitcoin, like in Bitcoin sent to him, and then he would have to give 2 million back. And what is he going to do? Like just decide not to? And then what is he going to do? Give people back the same amount they gave him? And what if he gets 50,000 people sending him? How is he going to parse that? It's going to take months to send the money back to people. But that's something that that's like a state of thinking that only happens when you have some time to brew on stimuli that you get. And that's what separates us higher brain, like that's why we have higher brain functions. That's what separates us from like the animal kingdom. But the reaction time online and the way Twitter moves especially is just so rapid that we're all thinking and acting like literal animals. I mean, it is like Animal Kingdom. There's an injured gazelle at the water hole and we all go. It's like a National Geographic special. It's just awful. And this hack really exposed that well, because of how much money they accrued really quickly. And yeah, there is now all of this thought about what did they grab anything else? Did they, build a blackmail file using the DMs of famous people? I don't know. I mean, again, that's, to me, stuff like that sounds a little far-fetched. I'm always on the side of like exciting shit like that doesn't happen. Now sometimes I'm wrong, right? But it's more of it's almost like a lower your expectations thing. That's how I feel about aliens. I feel like I can't get excited about the existence of aliens because like the constant disappointment, it just sucks. So you should approach it from the perspective of like nothing cool ever happens. So if I hear something cool happen, I'm just going to be like, it's probably not true. And then, yeah, if you're wrong, then cool. Like you'd rather be wrong about aliens not existing than about them existing, right? And so, the idea that some crazy hackery, like in a movie type thing happened here and the Bitcoin scam was just the face that they put on it to distract. It was the smoke and mirrors that everybody was like, look over here while you're doing the real heist over on this other side. Like, I always feel like reality is too boring for that shit. Go watch like Ocean's 11 or Mission Impossible. You'll get your dose of that. I don't know, the Thomas Crown Affair, other interesting heist movies. What was that other one called? Entrapment with Catherine Zeta-Jones and Sean Connery. And yeah, that's a quite an interesting development that was, and we'll see what happens with that going forward. And so I think the last thing I'm gonna talk about this week, and I'm probably not going to talk about this too much. It's just sort of it's a heavy topic. It's a topic that's sort of depressing to me, and also I think maybe a topic that is better discussed with the guest. But the whole Deshaun Jackson and later like leading into the more so the Nick Cannon anti-Semitism controversies, and with Nick Cannon also his crazy, hateful shit that he said about white people that kind of he got a pass for because he offered this like profuse like PR firm apology for the anti-Semitism. And so everyone was like, oh, that's great. And like all of that other crazy shit that he said was like kind of ignored. And I think he's still going to host one of the shows that he hosts. I'm kind of unaware of which shows he actually hosts. But again, Deshaun Jackson posting a Hitler quote. It was fake, but the quote itself was attributed to Hitler when he posted it, which is just crazy. And a lot of defenses of him, and then like I said, like Nick Cannon and his just bizarre and awful anti-Semitism, and it's all tied into Farrakhan. Again, this name keeps coming up again and again. There is this just baffling and upsetting willingness to just tolerate that guy's existence. And I know that the word tolerance is, comes from the word to tolerate, but when somebody's talking about the Jews as termites and cockroaches and shit, like the fact that, like major celebrities that do mainstream celebrity stuff can just like praise Farrakhan and talk about what a good guy he is, or defend people who say that and just get a pass for it, is just really sad. And it's hypocritical, and and also it's hard to have honest and open discussions about it, because a lot of it comes from the black community, and unfortunately a lot of the attempts to talk about it then veer into just like racial mudflinging, and that's totally unhelpful. Like, you don't want to create a situation where you don't want to pit the black and Jewish communities against each other. I think that on the whole, and to a very large degree, both communities are like disgusted with that stuff, and there is also a huge affinity between both communities. There is a lot of a commonality. There is a lot of sort of shared experience that Jews and African Americans have. And, it's no surprise that Jews were sort of heavily involved in the civil rights movement. There is a lot of like, hey, we know the drill, right? We've had similar things happen to us. We've experienced similar othering and similar oppression. It's obviously not the same exact circumstances, but there has always been this kind of, we kind of get each other, or, at least by some people. And so turning it into like, oh, there is the black community accepts anti-Semitism. That's not true at all. I think that the fear of calling it out in some people relates to the fear of being accused of doing that. If you call it out, if you are extremely harsh on, rappers who say anti-Semitic things, or if you are, appropriately or similarly harsh on someone like that as you would, some white supremacist who said things about black people. And there is, unfortunately, again, in sort of like the woke world, there is this idea of like this thing, I feel like there's an injustice that happened here. Nick Cannon said anti-Semitic stuff, but if I go too hard against him and I'm white, I'm going to come across as though I'm stepping out of line because I'm criticizing somebody who's black, and how, and maybe there's some kind of perspective that I'm not privy to in my privilege that can somehow explain that, which is again part of the sort of broken attitude of wokeism to me. It's sort of paternalistic and it's patronizing to say, to look at, to say like, oh, it's because of their environment that they say things. They don't know any better. I said on Twitter that Ilhan Omar gets a pass like this too. And I feel like I respect her more by accusing her of using anti-Semitic dog whistles. I'm actually respecting Ilhan Omar more than the people who give her a pass and say, oh, she doesn't know any better. Because I'm like, what do you mean she doesn't know any better? She's like my age, right? She's in her late 30s and she has kids and she was a policy fellow at the University of Minnesota and she's in fucking Congress. And you're going to tell me, oh, she's naive and she doesn't know any better? Fuck that. And she's way smarter than her defenders are like giving her credit for. And there is this sort of, whatever, there's a lot of cliches to call it the soft bigotry of low expectations and all of that crap. But yeah, I call it infantilizing, the idea that, oh, they don't know any better because they're not like us. I look at Ilhan Omar like at eye level. Like I don't think that she comes from some environment that is less able to teach her about the world and about being smart and knowing exactly the subtext of what you're saying. No, I respect her intelligence enough to think that she knows exactly what she's doing. And I can say the same thing about someone like Nick Cannon or Deshaun. I mean, I don't know if I'm not necessarily applying that same standard now to Deshaun Jackson or to Nick Cannon because, Nick Cannon, again, did issue like a really profuse apology. And yes, a PR firm wrote that. PR firms write all of those apologies. But once again, let's go back to internet reaction time. Sometimes things that you said or did, when it's pointed out to you why those things are wrong or insulting or fucked up, you can grow to understand that and to accept that and to feel embarrassed by what you said and to feel like you need to atone for it. I don't know if there's anybody listening to this who doesn't have something like that, who can't look back in his life and say, yeah, I said that and I'm ashamed of that. And I'm not talking about saying racial slurs in high school. I'm saying like you fought with your girlfriend once or with your one of your parents or I don't know what, and you said something to them in anger that you later felt bad for. I have weird random shit that I carry around from me from like since childhood, like insults that I've said that I was like, God, I still feel bad about that. And I was 14 when I said that to someone and I still feel weirdly bad because of how grossly, like how badly I succumbed to my instinct to like say the most hurtful thing to someone that I could think of. And so, yeah, sometimes, so your PR firm puts out an apology because you're a business and you still got to make your millions and yada, yada. But yeah, maybe you are willing to put in the time and maybe you do emerge from something like that saying to yourself, wow, I can't believe I said that stuff and I can't believe I thought it and or alternatively, like, yeah, I thought that stuff, but I understand now why saying it like I did was so pernicious because of how closely it echoed things that were said in the past in order to excuse like the literal extermination of Jews. But yeah, I would actually love to have someone on here to talk about this stuff in a more back and forthy way. I would love to have the perspective of someone who comes from a different background than I do. I mean, I also have kind of an odd background to bring to this because, I'm Jewish, but I did not grow up in this country. And so a lot of the cultural, the social context of different ethnic groups and the interplay between them is stuff that I kind of learned from living here for a decade plus, but it's not something that I grew up inside, like, say maybe one of my cousins who was born here, or again, maybe somebody who's black. Again, I would love to have somebody from the black community here to give me a better understanding of stuff like that. And I do talk, like on Twitter, I have friends and I speak privately because again, I hate having a lot of these discussions out in the open on Twitter because it's so bad faith and the format is so bad. If I want to know something like that, if I want to have a painful discussion about, the dynamic between the black and Jewish communities and anti-Semitism, I'm not going to tweet somebody about it. I'm going to DM them and I'm going to have like a long, thoughtful discussion with them. And actually something similar happened to me last week where it was about the Bari Weiss thing. Somebody I know tweeted something about it that I thought was like just terrible. And I tweeted to them, God, that was a terrible take or something like that. And they DM'd me about it. And then I said, you know what? Why don't we do this more often? Like, I don't even know why I tweeted you. I should have DM'd you. We should have hashed this whole thing out in private because we ended up having like a really thoughtful discussion about it. And it doesn't even matter that we don't agree about Bari Weiss in particular or this or that topic in general. It's more about being able to express yourself in a more nuanced and like long form way, and especially if it's somebody that you're acquainted with or you're friends with, not some internet stranger that you fight with. You really want to be able to hash that out in a way that like retains your friendship. I said that I muted a bunch of people that I liked in order for me to not stop liking them. And I actually think that should apply to me too. Meaning if somebody's a friend of mine and they feel like if they don't mute my tweets, they might grow to dislike me, just fucking mute me. It's not worth it. It's not worth, like, my tweets are not important. If we're friends, especially if we're friends who like meet in real life and hang out in real life, just fucking mute my tweets and never read them ever. If that will impact our real world friendship, never read my tweets. For real, it's so much more important. The interactions outside of this platform are so much more important than the ones on it. And the only thing that this does is let you know what the people around you think about everything all of the time. And maybe you don't need that. Maybe you have friends that you don't need that. And you know what? Good friends of mine from years past, from before I was heavily on Twitter and before Twitter existed, and friends who aren't on Twitter and stuff, I think like, wow, if I saw the tweets of someone like that, because I know what they think about the world and politics and whatever, if I had to look at the things that he said about current events every single day, I would have grown to dislike him. And why? What's the point of that? I remember in college, a really good friend of mine in college, we would hang out all the time, like great friends. And one time we were sitting in my roommate's room and we got into a discussion about politics and it turned into a big fight. And at some point I got up and I was like, I'm leaving because I don't want to fight. Like, I don't want us to not be friends. And like, I left and I slammed the door shut. And after that, we just never talked about politics anymore. And it was fucking fine. Like, we just went back to being really good friends. And we were just like, you know what? Let's not talk about this one topic. Because clearly, like, our opinions on it, they're like a huge gulf. He wasn't even mad like I was the one who was mad. He was one of those people who just like, everything just like bounces off of him. But so what? In other cases, it's someone else who's the like, I lost a friend who couldn't stand my opinions, even though I did not mind his, like years ago. The point is, the person who thinks that they can't bear to address stuff like politics without having it damage their friendship, the other person should be like, yeah, let's not do that then. Because who cares? Like, why does it matter to my friendship with someone that we don't agree about Bari Weiss or about cancel culture or about Trump or about anything? As long as we know that we like each other, we know that that as people, like, we value each other as people, and that we know that, like, when push comes to shove, like, the person is a good enough person for you to want to be friends with and associate with. Why would you let Twitter come in the middle of that? And I'm saying that as someone who has let that happen. And it's sad. I said to someone today, just because I know the forest is full of traps, that doesn't mean I don't fall in some of them sometimes. I'm not above this system. I'm inside of it. When I comment on things that happen on Twitter and I say people do this and people do that and people say to me, you do too. And I'm like, yeah, I say we, I don't say you. I'm fully aware that I'm being manipulated. But that doesn't turn me into like I'm immune to it. You wear a coronavirus mask. That doesn't mean you're immune to coronavirus. You're vigilant about stuff, but you're still susceptible to it. I'm a flawed person. I said today, I was talking about content amplifiers on Twitter, where some account will be like, what's your, which celebrity would you want to quarantine with? And there's like 6 pictures, and just it turns into this huge thing, and they get like a gazillion replies and stuff. And it's an engagement amplifier. It's social media people do that to like inflate their numbers. And I said to people, don't do that. And someone said, you do that all the time. And I said, yeah, I know. And I'm saying that to myself too. I'm also talking to me. I fall into those traps too. Yes. That's why they're traps. And on that note, I think I'm going to wrap up episode 2 of tentative format, T3F. Future permanent name to come, or this, like I said, where we might have a talk about whether or not you guys are cool with this name. I don't know. Chapo Trap House is not like that's. I'm sure that at some point people were like, really? You're going to call your podcast Chapo Trap House? You're not going to call it something more like, I don't know, permanent? And look at it now. That's you hear that and you think of the podcast, even though it's like, it's almost like a random, like 3 random words, one after the other, that are almost like totally unrelated. But I mean, more power to them. Like they turned that bizarre thing into like a really recognizable brand name. Look at me giving props to fucking Chapo. Anyway, I'm Noam Bloom, aka Neontaster, and you can find my content on youtube.com/c/neontaster, or currently at neontaster.libsyn.com. That is LIBSYN. And this is going to end up on iTunes and Spotify, and this is probably going to have a new home that's not Libsyn. I just got to set it all up, and that is going to happen. But for now, this is where you're probably listening to it. And so thank you. Yeah, and I would, love if you would like share it and help me get the word out. The idea is to grow this into something with maybe a Patreon, or I don't know. And the more engagement I get on this, the more likes and the more comments and the more numbers that I see, the more I want to like invest my time and effort into it. And like I said, bring more guests and this is going to be a constant work in progress. Hence the under construction signs and names that a name that implies a work in progress. So thanks a lot, and I'll catch you all next week. Bye.